week gone by once again, one filled with swearing-in ceremonies of phenomenal women, I must say. Chief Justice Sophia Akufu and her predecessor, Georgina Theodora Wood, now on the Council of State. In the same week, the Supreme Court was extremely busy with Gitmo 2, School of Law and Judgment Death cases, which had been before it. It also has been a week of yet another bout of political chaos and presentation of a much-anticipated report whose summary sounded pretty much like an open secret. We've also seen one diplomatic word against another between Ghana and the United States of America in the same week. Welcome to the show. Here we present editorial perspectives of the news and information which came your way in the course of the week. Evans Mensah is head of our political desk, and Kojo Youngson is host of our Super Morning show on Joy 99.7 FM. They'll be joining me pretty shortly, but let me be the last to wish former President Jerry Rawlings a happy birth week, and congratulations to Seth Kwame Boateng for emerging the Emmy Man of the Year in communication category. Also, to all our Muslim brothers and sisters, happy Eid. Today, we'll look at the NDC Kwesibocho report, and then we'll have a look also at the NPP's chaotic Subing meeting, and of course, what has brought about peace in Savelugu, which was, of course, also chaotic because of opposition to the appointment of an MCE. We'll look at the Supreme Court this week. Like I said, they've been looking at the law school, Gitmo 2, the judgment debt, and a whole lot. We'll be talking about that one as well. And Ghanaians deported, what diplomatic privileges are there to enjoy by our former president? We'll talk about all of that. Does it have any threat to Ghana-US relations? Finally, and of course, if we do have time, we'll be looking at the NMC anti-porn directive. It's a very interesting discussion. I'm sure a lot of people will be looking forward to it. But before we look at those issues which already have been debated left, right, center, there's a rather interesting story that came along with Vice President Bawumia and the business delegation that he led to China. I'll read to you the intro right after this break. Please stay with us. This is Editor's Forum. My name is Gifty Ando Apia. So like I said, that intro is right here. Let me read that to you. It says Vice President Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia says that Ghana would have to leverage its natural resources in order to secure a 15 billion financial partnership between the two countries. At a press briefing at the Jubilee Lounge of the Kotoka International Airport this afternoon, Dr. Bawumia, who was just returning from China, said it makes economic sense to leverage the unexploited resources for the facility to help the country realize the programs that the NPP promised Ghanaians ahead of the 2016 general election. So the Vice President also announced that the Chinese government has promised a 7.3 million grant to the army. And one more thing, he's also adding that the Chinese government has promised to release the remainder of the 3 billion China Development Bank loan facility that was frozen under the John Mahama administration. How much implications do all of these agreements have for President Akufo-Addo's trade not aid mantra? That is what my guest will be engaging right after we listen to Vice President Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia. Watch this.
Captains of industry, our friends of the media, I just arrived from the People's Republic of China after a 4-day official visit at the invitation of the Chinese government. The visit is a high-level government, is the first high-level government official since the new Patriotic Party took office in January this year, just 6 months ago, the first to China. It has been 4 days of marketing Ghana, marketing the vision of Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo for a massive transformation of the economy and infrastructure of Ghana. I went with very senior members of government, such as the Senior Minister, Yao Safomafu, Trade and Industry Minister, Alan Chiramanting, Transport Minister, Kwabena Furia Siama, Roads and Highways Minister, Kwesi Amoakot Atta, Railways Development Minister, Joe Gate, the Governor of the Bank of Ghana, Dr. Ernest Addison, and many more. Dr. Kofi Amoah is here. People from the private sector were also there. Oting Jesse was a large private sector delegation that came along. We went to China to essentially try to make a case for an enhancement in the development partnership with China, a partnership that we want to be based on trade and investment and not aid, and a partnership based on shared prosperity for all. Going to China, we're fully aware that given Ghana's economic situation, we needed what really amounts to a big bang approach, or in the past you talk about a Marshall Plan for Ghana, that sort of needs that we have in the areas of our infrastructure, energy, railways, water, sanitation, roads, and so on. The needs are so massive that we needed a type of a Marshall Plan to be able to lay the foundation for our strategy of agricultural transformation as well as industrialization. The question that we had as the economic management team deliberated these issues was, we need a big bang, but how are we really going to finance it? Traditionally, the model has been aid. Let's rely on aid. But this is not sustainable and has proven not to be sustainable. Then you borrowing is the second model. Of course, we've borrowed ourselves out of space in Ghana. The debt stocks are at a level that doesn't allow more space for borrowing to finance the type of investment that we have need for. Of course, China has been financing, in terms of the model that China has used so far in financing infrastructure in Ghana has largely been one of debt, that we borrow from them, and usually we collateralize with either oil proceeds, which has since been outlawed by the Petroleum Revenue Management Act, or some cocoa proceeds, as we did with Bui or so on. So it was very clear to us that given our debt situation and all of that, the existing model also, as far as China was concerned, was also not very sustainable. And so we needed a new paradigm, a new model in terms of our relationship with China, to be able to persuade them to think in that direction for the type of partnership that we want to build. That notwithstanding, for any partnership that you want to build with any other country or any investor, there are basically three questions that they would ask you. Do you have a credible economic program? That is the first question. Do we have a credible economic program? And I think when we went to China, we explained to them what Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo's vision is for the economy in the area of industry, one district, one factory, the anchor industries for industrialization, the planting for food and jobs, one village, one dam, the whole gamut of policies across various sectors, I think they found was a very credible one, and one that they felt they could support as a partner. Of course, I mean, if you want infrastructure, the second question will be, what are your projects? Do you have a portfolio of projects that we can support, that makes sense for us to support in partnership with you? Of course, before we left for China, we asked the same question of ourselves. And the economic management team directed that we put together such a portfolio of projects and priorities before actually leaving for China. And so we actually did put together that portfolio of priorities of projects across all the sectors in Ghana, for which we sort of took to discuss with China. Then the third question becomes, okay, even if you have the projects, how do you pay for them? What is the financing model that you are going to use to pay for them? I'm happy to say that we presented a model based on the fact that we made a point that Ghana is not a poor country. We have a lot of natural resources. Untapped and proven mineral resources include about 2.8 billion metric tons of iron ore, 960 million metric tons of bauxite, 430 million metric tons of manganese, and 430 million metric tons of limestone. This is excluding gold and oil and so on. So the whole point what we were making, that you need to look at a new financing model, because we have a lot of resources as a country. We are not a poor country. Of course, those resources are currently locked in the ground. If you take bauxite alone, forget about everything else, bauxite alone, the 960 million metric tons of bauxite, if you set up a bauxite refinery and at today's world market prices, you refined the bauxite that we have that has not yet been mined, at today's world market prices, you will get $460 billion US. Just at today's, just our bauxite reserves alone, $460 billion US. So our case to China and of course other partners would be that if we need just $20 billion US to do a major, massive Marshall Plan, and we have 460 billion sitting in the ground, then what we really need is to develop a financing model that leverages just a small fraction of our reserves to finance this infrastructure needs that we have. Initially, they had not really thought about that particular model, but I think in explaining it, we've had some good listening. I think as far as China is concerned. So, ladies and gentlemen, our efforts began to bear fruits in China. And as I say, it was a collective effort. As you may have read earlier, the People's Republic of China and the China's state and private sector enterprises have together committed to support the economic transformation agenda of Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo. So far, the commitments that we received in China before leaving amounted to a total of $15 billion US. And there's a possibility that within the next month or so, there are some discussions that we couldn't conclude, that another $4 billion will be added to that. Of course, we will follow these through at various meetings during the 4-day visit. Some leading Chinese companies and agencies of the government of China signed these MOUs totaling about 15 billion. In the area of industrialization, for example, the China National Building Materials and Equipment Import and Export Corporation signed a facility with the private sector led by the Association of Ghana Industries. Actually, I think Otinjesi may have signed for them to provide funding for the One District, One Factory program. Again, the One District, One Factory program is not a public government going to set up factories. These are private sector initiatives that we want to see happen. So this $2 billion is going to come through banks. The banks that are in discussion with them are GCB, Universal Merchant Bank, Access Bank, and so on. These are the initial banks that will start, and more banks, I'm sure, will join. And the applications for these resources will go through the banks, and they will be evaluated, and then the factories will be constructed in partnership with the China National Building and Materials Equipment Corporation. And I think this is going to be a major boost for the country as far as the One District, One Factory program is concerned.
Vice President Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia there. Like I said, this is Editors Forum. My name is Gifty Andop. Yakojo Youngson is host of Super Morning Show on Joy 99.7 FM. He's made it. Hello, welcome.
How are you? Why do you always have to advertise my rush to your studio?
Anything. I really haven't said anything.
Yes, I made it.
Besides, we are fantastically listening to the Vice President from China. Not that he was made in China, but we sent him to China and we brought him back. Yeah. I'm sure on business first class, which is fine, isn't it? We want our leaders to have the best. You sound
slightly envious.
You are welcome, Kojo,
Thank
to the
you very
show.
much.
Why won't I be envious? Who wouldn't want to be vice president? By the way, Evans Mensah is head of our political desk. He is coming. He will join us very soon. Kojo, you look fantastic. Yes. How are you? How are you enjoying the weekend?
Not bad at all. I've had a quiet one. I ventured out of the house to wash my car.
I like the word ventured.
He ventured, yes. And then it turned out that I had to be here with you. So, yes.
Thank you very much for coming on the show. Like I said, we're waiting for Evans, but today we're talking about some hard issues. A small fraction of our resources for infrastructural needs. Isn't that, I mean, that really should be okay. But was it that the MPP's promises, as they made it during the 2016 election, was a promise without a plan? What does this do to the president's mantra of trade and not aid? Kojo, what do you think?
Well, it was very interesting listening to the vice president's summary of his trip. And he keeps using the expression, a new model, a new model of financing. And, well, I suppose the old model has always been borrowing, hasn't it? We go begging for a loan at as reasonable a rate as we can get.
Now that you mentioned that, Kojo, I'd like to draw your attention to the fact that initially they did say it was a loan, and then later on he said it was not a loan but a grant. So is it that they didn't agree on something?
Right, which one are you talking about? Because you mentioned really a few separate things. There was the grant for the military or the Navy.
Yes.
And something to build a bridge, I believe. That was a grant.
Okay.
But then before that, he was talking about this 15 billion. And he described that as a partnership, a financing partnership. Okay. Now that I suppose is what he was referring to when he talked about a new model. Okay. In the past, particularly with China, the aim was always to get as good, as nice a loan as possible and see how many roads we can build with it, right? But this time around, the idea is instead of borrowing and then spending decades trying to pay it back at rates that are crippling, why don't we sell them something? After all, we said trade, not aid. Right?
So that's trade?
So, well, yeah, selling something is trade. So he gives an example of our bauxite reserves. And he puts a value on it, that all the bauxite reserves that we've estimated for the country is about $460 billion worth. None of it has been mined yet, this $460 billion value. None of it has been mined yet. So he he sort of proposed that, well, if we were to take a fraction.
He's not proposing.
Of
this
that,
is an agreement.
Okay.
So it's a done deal.
So if we were to take a fraction of this $460 billion worth of bauxite, okay, and sell it to China, that would raise over 20 billion. And we're looking for what, 15 billion.
Will you be in a position where you'd find this arrangement a bit worrying, given the background that we have with the Chinese, and especially when it comes to our natural resources? And we're talking about gold, because Galamsey has been one of the biggest issues that we've had, and one of the biggest areas where we've had issues with the Chinese as well.
Well, I would be curious to find out the modalities for mining this bauxite. Will it be Ghanaian companies that mine it and refine it, and then we sell to China? Or will the Chinese come and build factories here and refine it? Because our laws say they can't do large-scale mining, right? That's what our laws say. So how are they going to access this bauxite? That's if it's the Chinese who are accessing it. If not, if it's Ghanaians who are going to do this, and then we sell the refined bauxite to China, that's a good idea. I'm happy about that.
Really?
It will create jobs. It will create business opportunities for Ghanaians, and then we sell the product and get the money we need to do all the different things, planting for food and jobs and all of that business. So yeah, if it's going to involve Ghanaians in the industry, there is an argument for it. But if the Chinese are going to come along and build their own, set up their own mining companies, then another conversation ensues, doesn't it? So yeah, let's find out what the detail is, and then as a country, I think we can start doing our critique of what the Vice President has agreed with China.
Are you very confident that you get the details which you seem to agree that is required?
Gifty, this is Ghana. I'm never confident about getting details.
Okay.
That's just the nature of how things are in this country. But I think we should ask. I think it's our responsibility to seek this information. And let's hear what response we are given. I think this is important. It's not the kind of thing that can be done in secret. It's not a national security matter.
Oh.
So
some will say, trust me, there will be a lot of secrecy.
Okay, well, let's find out. Let's ask the question.
The former minister for lands and natural resources, Inusa Fuseni, once on my show, indicated that a whole delegation from China attempted to bribe him. And this is not like, this is supposed to be, I don't think it was an individual, or a few groups. It is not a group that the Chinese government was not aware of. Had tried to, bribe him with education for his son in China to stop the fight on Galamsey. Now, John Peter Amewu, the sector minister, has been for months working against Galamsey, and all of us in the media have been loud on anti-Galamsey. We know the role of the Chinese here. Lots of people say, well, this is either a PR stance that the Chinese people are looking, to bring them some kind of solace for the lost, if you like, public goodwill that they have lost. It could either be that, or that this is a sign that we've opened the floodgates for more Chinese involvement in Galamsey. Well,
once again, it's all in the detail. And until we know the specifics, everything we say is a supposition. We are assuming things here. Let's find out how exactly this bauxite is to be mined, whether or not it will be done in accordance with our laws, and of course, who benefits, from whatever deal we make with China. Because let's be real, the fight against Galamsey cannot stop. It must not stop. It must continue. And if the Chinese play a role in this, then those who are arrested must be prosecuted, and if found guilty, imprisoned as necessary. That must not stop. It must continue.
Okay.
But at the same time, we are a country in the world. We trade with the world. If we have something valuable and we can get a good price for it,
we should go for it.
We should sell it and make money to do the things that we need to do. The bauxite is not benefiting anyone while it's in the ground.
Okay.
You know, so if we can make some money for it, I certainly don't see why not, as long as everything is done properly above board. So let's ask the questions, let's get the details,
okay,
and then we'll see what we're in for.
Two fundamental issues that I wanted to raise, which you have raised, Kojo. One is trade and not aid. This has been the mantra of the NPP, and indeed it has been something that President Akufo-Addo says almost all the time that he gets any platform, any public platform, he speaks about it. How does this feel to you?
I've got to say, the financial partnership trade bit, that's what, I mean, I've talked about and said, let's ask the questions. But the other bit, you know, where we are securing some aid for our military, I think it's for the Navy,
yes.
and then something to build a bridge. Okay, for the Army. Those are the ones that I would like us to scrutinize a little bit more. Because yes, we've heard trade, not aid. Certainly that doesn't mean that we will no longer receive any aid as a country. I don't think that's what it means.
People argue that we're not ready for it. The country is not ready for it.
Well, either way, if you say trade and not aid, I think what they are suggesting is that as a nation, we should depend more on trade than aid.
Rather than aid.
Okay, so for me, I want to know what the success criteria is. How much aid is Ghana going to take under President Akufo-Addo? How much aid, what is the aid target? So that if we exceed it, then we know that they have failed in achieving the trade not aid goal.
Okay.
Okay, so these are questions we have to ask. What's the success criteria? What is the target that this government has set itself? And this aid that China is giving us, 15 million or whatever the figure is. Yes, 15 million. How much of our target is covered by that? You know, so that as a nation we can always keep track of this promise that the government has made and how well they are doing to achieve it. For me, this statement from the Vice President basically raises questions. It raises questions, and I think that over the next few days, we should do everything we can to get those answers so that it becomes a bit clearer for us what exactly we have signed ourselves up for with the people of China.
Interesting. Just so you know, Evans Mensah has joined in the discussion. Evans Mensah, the latecomer, but I can understand him. He's been working the whole day and he had to, you know, go home and come back. So Evans, you're welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Gifty.
How are you enjoying the weekend?
Oh, well, fortunately I'm working, so there's nothing to enjoy.
So you must be enjoying. Don't you guys always say, I love my job?
Oh yeah, you love your job.
Yeah, you got to love your job.
The stress is the part that I guess you never get used to.
Because I wouldn't agree. Look how he's looking all sleek and
yeah, he'll start working. I'm sure from here he'll start working to produce tomorrow. He'll tell you that it's stressful.
It's stressful.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. But anyway, these are things that we still have to talk about. People are eager to know what you think about this as people who follow the news and people who set the agenda. So Evans, we've just been talking about leveraging our resources, or he says a small fraction of our resources for our infrastructural need. You've been following the story on radio on the midday news, and I've just been picking Kojo's thoughts on what this does to the trade and not aid mantra, and whether or not this will break the spine of people who are working, the anti-Galamsey campaigners.
Well, I think it's if there's anything that the president has been very consistent on, has been the trade and not aid. I think I recall when the MPP has a way of couching phrases to define whatever period they are in, and they're very good at that. When President Akufo took over power in 2001, we all remember the zero tolerance for corruption that became a mantra. Then he went into creation of the Office of Accountability at the presidency. People judge that in terms of the outcomes depending on a few factors. Then we come to the Akufo-Addo government. He's developed this very catchy phrase of, trade not aid. In fact, he's been saying, in addition to that, that a Ghana beyond aid. So I think that sort of, he wants us to define his either one term or two term as whether or not he's able to get us to a Ghana beyond aid and Ghana that trades and doesn't deal in aid. And for me, it's early day yet to judge. A lot of this is political rhetoric, and so it's fine in the first 6 months to build people's excitement and anticipation with rhetoric. It's good. In terms of the actual on-the-ground policies, though, whether or not it's backing what he's doing, I think the jury's still out on that. But he's done a few things that point to the fact that he wants us to shift away from that. But for a country that is third world, that is heavily indebted, you still have to rely on a certain level of aid. I think this week he was doing analysis, and he was telling us about, I think he said, in the education sector or so, a lot of he was sort of disaggregating the percentage of aid that is going to go into funding the budget. And he was talking about corruption, and he was talking about how a few bunch of people at the ports have managed to get away with, I think, 2 billion CDs or something to that effect. And
because the systems are not
yes,
working.
and he was talking about, he was using to compare how foreigners, British taxpayers, are consistently funding our budget. Meanwhile, the reverse, when we are given the opportunity to control our own resources, we loot it. And so he wants to fight corruption with it. And so, I mean, the jury's still out on a lot of things. But I guess after a year, we'll get a better sense of where we are in terms of that mantra.
After a year, but then we're looking at this. Isn't this big enough to have implication for that mantra? This new Chinese arrangement that the vice president has led, and we're looking at what the 3 billion China CDB loan that didn't come. They are saying that we're going to release. I mean, in the Eswal administration, they explained that they had issues. Ghana and China had issues, agreeing to some of the conditionalities in there. So what is it that changed their mind?
Well, it's when I read the story this morning about China having signed an MOU. I think the specifics I read was to the 2 billion CDs they're going to give us to fund the one factory, one district, one factory policy. And it struck me that it sounds very familiar to what we heard the Chinese were going to do with infrastructure. They give us some of the money, but a lot of it, the CBD loan, a lot of it didn't come either. So really, I mean, when you go to China, and the delegation was quite a high-powered one. I saw the people who came back. It's interesting. I mean, the Chinese. I was reading the China Africa policy. They have purposed clearly in that document that they are going to reach out and influence the continent, and in essence, if you read what they said they're going to do for us, a lot of it is going to come to the China Infrastructural Corporation. There's a certain Chinese government-backed body that deals with that, and
it's a serious foreign policy for them, of course. And they will do it. They will try to. And it's all about dominance. It's all about, diplomatic, whatever, political dominance. But at the end of the day, it is up to how that country negotiates.
The question I ask is, they have a clear policy, and I think this question has been asked a million times. They have a clear policy on how to deal with that. This 2 billion CDs that they're going to, they know. And you see, I see a certain consistent approach that China is adopting to Ghana nowadays. See, we started the anti-Galamsey fight. The first thing they did, well, not the first thing, because it's
the first thing we see.
One of the key things they did that the controversy was to go and give 10,000 CDs to the Attorney General's department for the establishment of the the office of the independent prosecutor, which generated some controversy. Before that, remember that there's a Chinese firm that had also made some donation to another state agency that also became
the police stations
that also became problematic. Now, within that same period, this same period of 6 months that we are talking about chasing the Chinese out because of their degradation of the environment, somehow an arrangement was made for our vice president to travel to China with all the delegation to go and sign an MOU for $2 billion. Clearly, the Chinese have a strategy here, and for me, I guess my only comfort is that it was Bawumia who led it.
Why?
And again, this all based on the rhetoric we've had in the campaign until now, that he's somebody who at least has carved a niche for himself publicly, the image, as somebody who understands what he's doing, right?
Really?
I'm saying,
is that something you put your money on?
Wait a minute. I'm saying that in politics, image is important, right? For him, the image he's put out there is a competent guy who knows what he's doing. He's done it. He's been there. He can advise you and etc. That's the image. Now, on the flip side of the image, in politics, is then the reality. Okay. Now, this is one of the biggest, and if this is, I guess, one of the biggest challenges of Bawumia right now, this 2 billion thing. If it doesn't work out, like the controversies that surrounded the 3 billion, his whole reputation is hanging around this, right? So I will give him the benefit of the doubt that he knows what he's signed on to.
Let me bring Kojo in on this. Kojo, does this suffice for you?
Okay, so I don't think the reason why we should be comfortable with this is because of the reputation of Dr. Bawumia. I mean, yes, he does have a great reputation. I don't think you can take that away from him. But I don't think that's the reason why we should be comfortable with this deal.
Why for you?
Well, to be perfect, first of all, I'll tell you why that shouldn't be the reason. Okay. Who had a better reputation than the flag bearer himself, the president now, President Akufo-Addo, for following the rule of law and all of that business. Well, how many times did he say that we won't have any problems with Delta forces and all of that?
So for you, if it's about credibility of character,
it's not about the character. It's about the details. It's about the details. This is a deal that has been struck. So let's look at the details of that deal. It will be clear to us whether this is a beneficial deal for us or whether, once again, somebody is taking advantage of us. But it should be clear, all right? Because there are two separate things going on here. First, there is a financial partnership, which, from the example of bauxite that Dr. Bawumia gave, is a matter of trade. We're taking something, we're refining it, we're selling it to them. Getting money.
Refining it? Does he say that?
Oh, yes, he says refining the bauxite. So we're taking something, we're refining it, we're selling it to China. We're getting money and using it for, one district, one planting for food and all the other things that this government wants to do. Okay, that's one. The other one is aid, where they are giving, I think it's something 7-point-something million
I'm not sure. I don't think it's US dollars. We can get the details much later. But
7.3 million. It doesn't say what the currency is, but okay. So let's say it's cedis. 7.3 million cedis to the army.
It's likely to be Chinese yuan, but anyways, we'll get that correction here.
Well, either way, whatever the currency is, they are giving some money to the army. Now that is aid. Okay, now this is the kind of thing that is similar to what happened when the Attorney General's office was given this 10,000 and some computers or whatever, and when some Chinese company donated to the police. The same questions will arise around this. People will ask, right, okay, first of all, the question of, we said we are focusing on trade and not aid, so how come there's a little bit of aid coming with the trade? And secondly, is it appropriate for another government, another country to fund the military of a sovereign nation?
So that's 7.3, I'm getting the correction, 7.3 US dollars.
There you go. 7.3 million US dollars. Right, thank you. Okay, so the questions will come up. People will ask, this is our military, and we're having another nation, China, no less, aiding or funding some part of their operation, their activity. That will raise some questions about the appropriateness of this. And much as the reputation of Dr. Bawumia might give you some comfort, that's not where we should look for answers.
The answers are in the details.
We should look at the details.
Which is what you said previously. Evans, the answers are in the details. This is something you'd agree with.
Yeah, of course. I mean, the devil is always in the detail. And when it comes to dealing with international, we've seen, I mean, the thing about these deals is when they announce, they sound very sweet.
But the details.
But when time comes for the money to be disbursed and implementation, then you see the challenges. That is why, for me, I'm willing to wait and see. But I guess we need, for me, from what I said, having listened to Dr. Maya, a lot of questions still left unanswered. For example, I mean, and this is just drawing from experience we had with the CBD loan. Questions about the CDB loan. Questions about what is the catch?
Yes. Because Evans, you did rightfully point out, you chronicled it, all the things that the Chinese government, and it's a government affair, it's a diplomatic thing. So from the beginning, all the efforts they put in until now.
To come to a firm conclusion, because this is just happening today, we just had it today, and so there are a lot of questions. But for me, the fundamental question to ask is, what is the catch? What is in it for the Chinese?
Yes.
If somebody can answer that question clearly, then maybe I can make my mind up that this is a good deal to go. Because the Chinese guys are smart guys. They want to take over the world, but they want to take over the world through aid and assistance. And so when you're a government that says you want to build a Ghana beyond aid, I see the reason why I want to go to China. I still want to go to China. But why do you want to go to China at the time when we are clear that the Chinese citizens who are here, at least on what we've heard so far, aren't helping our cause with the environment? Because if you, they've complained quite openly that they are unhappy with the way you are treating our people. Can you then? It's a very difficult place for the current government to be. So far, this 6 months, the biggest thing that has been very consistent in the government is the fight against galamsey. And the Chinese are front and center of that.
But is it necessary at some point to separate the Chinese citizens from the Chinese government? Well, to us, is it all one and the same?
Well, no, not for us. But for the Chinese government themselves, it's the same.
Because we have seen consistently the roles that they have played.
Follow the Chinese ambassador. Follow the Chinese ambassador. What she had said publicly on this matter. The Chinese government is clearly unhappy. And when she speaks for the Chinese government. You can't make that separation. When she speaks about the way we are handling this, she's always unhappy with the way this is being handled. And that's the Chinese government telling our government that you're unhappy with the way we are handling this matter.
That's because they think that there are Ghanaians fronting.
Well, they talk about things like how the matter is being handled in the press.
Yes, that's why.
They say they are not happy about how we are characterizing the people of China when it comes to
that is one.
But then there are Chinese
but they also said
that they're saying they are not happy with the fact that the Ghanaian government is fighting and arresting.
Nobody will say that.
Arresting Chinese.
Okay, let Evans.
The last time she went to meet the information minister, I remember very clearly. Part of the concerns that she raised is that they arresting people, etc. It's not the way to go. She believed there are deeper aspects to the galamsey fight than simply going and arresting people and prosecuting them. She said that very clearly.
Which is right.
Exactly. And
but we can't take away the fact that we've seen consistently the role of the Chinese in this business.
Which business? The galamsey
in the galamsey business.
Yeah. I mean, for me, I'm saying that it's a very tricky place for our government to be.
Right.
When you're prosecuting their citizens, okay, all the public comments we've had from the Chinese government, i.e. their ambassador to Ghana, complaining about the press coverage, complaining about the government approach. Because I remember that document where they cited the previous government's approach. And they said that approach, when they started, had the same, but didn't work out. And they were warning our government that this is not a way because we've gone that way before. And then you go for this MOU. Well, so for me, I guess my point is, what is in it for the Chinese? I want to hear that. Okay. Once I hear that, then maybe as a citizen, I can make up my mind whether this is a good deal for us. But whatever it is, in government you need to wheel and deal, right? You need to give something to get something in return.
When you've made
what are we giving?
For
me, what are we giving?
Especially when you've made promises like one factory, one district, one factory, and you clearly don't seem to have a plan to support it financially.
Well, they say they have a plan, and
the plan is to go to China.
They published this week.
The plan is to use the private sector.
Yeah. I mean,
that's what they've
been saying.
I think the last couple of weeks.
But this is obviously not the private sector.
They published in the graphic.
Maybe it's Chinese companies. You never know. Listen. Let's not guess for them. One thing I did want to mention, though, earlier I was talking about some of the questions people will raise about the aid that's going to the military. I think it's important to state this is not the first time another country has given aid to our military. They give them logistics, training, sometimes I believe even money. Okay, so but I'm saying that these are the questions people will ask simply because it kind of fits the pattern of other things that have happened between the Chinese government and us in the past. But once again, I think Evans and I are saying the same thing. In the end, it's all down to the detail.
It's all down
if it's just a matter of us selling something to China and getting money for it, fair enough.
I think for me as a journalist and working on this, I guess from tomorrow going, the reason why this is newsworthy particularly is just because of the context and the timing.
Exactly.
For me, the context and the timing is we are fighting a huge war against galamsey where the Chinese are front and center. And we know that the government, from the ambassador's point of view, unhappy with the way we are handling it. The approach being taken.
Right.
And within that same context, then we go for this huge either loan or grant or whatever
loan,
MOU.
it's a mixture.
From the
so it's
from
like
the
we're
same
going to be
government.
really rich
from the same
this
government that
agreement.
is complaining about the approach and the way the government going in collaboration with the media is portrayed, etc., etc. I think for me that it raises very
it's a
complex
fascinating
questions.
paradox. I've got to
You
tell
know,
you.
And so, since
for
you
the
both
government.
have spoken about details and the fact that the devil may be in the detail, I'm curious to find out from you what you reckon the media will represent this particular story. This is just breaking today. And so we're looking at a whole week of analysis, perhaps a whole week of news items here and there, and commentary from government, I'm sure. How do you reckon the various media platforms
First of all, there's going to be a lot of confusion.
And what will the reaction be?
There's going to be a lot of confusion about what it is. What is it that Dr. Bawumia is talking about? Is he talking about the Chinese bribing us, paying us off, giving us something we want, just so that we also do something they want?
That's how it sounds.
That is a PR challenge government needs to surmount this week.
Actually, let's be fair. If you replace the word China with any other country, Venezuela, Nicaragua, whatever, all of a sudden what Dr. Bawumia said sounds a lot more innocent.
Yeah, true.
It's just because it's China.
China, yeah.
All right, so that's the reality. We have to get our head around that perspective and be clear that, look, it's only because it's China that we're asking these questions.
Do you trust that the media will do that?
Oh, well, I know we will do our jobs, but I
Because if you don't,
I can't speak for the
social
rest
media, you
of
see the
media.
questions are popping up already. You must ask those questions because you're fighting. This is a huge PR challenge. Government needs to somehow. It's not only because of the Galamsey, but also because of recent history with the CBD loan. I keep on mentioning.
Yeah.
That it's. When you mention China 2 billion, that's the thing that comes to your mind. I mean, it's
it sounds like a bribe. I mean, on the face value, it does sound like that.
It just, you see, when it sounds too good to be true,
it's actually perhaps too good to be true.
Exactly.
I don't envy this government. I've got to tell you. The more I think about it, I don't envy them at
that
all.
you've
Because
gone
look,
all of a sudden.
look, we've told them to fix our problems for us, okay? And they've said something that we like the sound of.
Yes.
Trade, not aid. We
But
like
that's
it.
politics for you.
We like it. So then they go out there and strike a trade deal. And all of a sudden, we're like, no, we don't like who you want to trade
the
with.
context.
So you ask yourself,
Timing,
okay, so who's a
as
better
says.
alternative? Who else has such a high demand for our natural resources and is willing to pay that fair price that we need in order, to make the most out of these resources?
That is if the price is fair
Donald
indeed.
Trump is not waiting to buy bauxite from us.
Okay.
Theresa May isn't either. So where do we go with this?
Maybe
It's
Russia?
like they are stuck between a rock and a hard place. And it's very difficult to raise money fast, and that's what we need as a nation. We need this money fast.
Yeah.
Evans,
So
your expectation is that the traditional media will take this up, and if they don't, it will be on social media?
I mean, no, I think we don't have a choice than to take this up. But I think for government, one of the first things they need to do is to lay out the facts, be as transparent as possible. They should be sensitive to the fact that the timing, the context is so has conspired to make this whole deal very suspicious. I guess that's the thing.
But we knew they were going to China.
Yes.
What did we expect them to come back with?
We didn't know they were going to
we
bring...
didn't go to
we
this
thought it was a
juicy
tourist
deal.
trip. What did we expect them to come back with?
Maybe to have a conversation and say, okay, we are bringing back all Chinese...
Chinese galamseyers.
Yes, maybe.
Why would they have to travel there to do that?
So for me, I would say, I mean, if I'm a government information person, I'm thinking about how do we communicate this. I think the way to communicate this is be transparent. I mean, tell us, when is the first tranche going to come? Is it coming in physical cash? Those questions. I mean, what is the catch? As I asked earlier,
Okay.
What is the
Show
Chinese
us the
getting?
deal.
Show us
Show us
I
the
mean,
deal.
And lay it bare, okay? So that if one day there's a glitch, and these deals are always like that. It's 2 billion, nicely announced, right? When money starts coming, it's not coming. Then you can come back and say, well, we told you, we expect. Tell us what challenges you anticipate. Okay. Then we are on the same page with you. But if they don't do that, they are going to have challenges because the opposition will jump into that vacuum.
Exactly.
If they don't fill it.
Which is why I was asking the question about reaction. What reaction are we expecting to see?
If they don't fill the vacuum, the context, all those questions that might arise in people's minds with proper information and transparency, the opposition will fill it. I mean, and because they were criticized for the.
Well, they will, whichever way. But you are asking for transparency.
Yeah, for me,
perhaps being very honest with the information. But Kojo, if you are honest and you put out information, like Evan says, the opposition is there. They're just, waiting to jump in on this. So how honest can you really be?
Oh, you have to be totally honest. 100%.
Really?
That's the only way to do it.
Yeah.
So that whatever objections will be raised can be raised for you to deal with them.
Okay.
That's the way to do it. If there is anything at all about this deal that cannot be shared with the public, then already
there's a problem.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That'll be your final word on this?
Yeah.
I think my final word on this will be whoever addresses this and takes on the meeting must address the elephant in the room, must himself pose the question and answer it, which is, will this affect our resolve to deal with the Galamsey menace and the involvement of the Chinese? The person must pose that question and say categorically, no it won't, and tell us why it won't. If you don't, that question is lingering on anybody's mind. When you hear Ghana go for 2 billion from Chinese, it's lingering. First of all, they should learn a lesson from what happened with the 10,000 CDs to the Attorney General's department.
Yeah.
With a lesson from what happened with the donation to the police.
The police.
Now the government itself is getting its own.
Now the entire country.
Its own whatever. That same criticism, cynicism will emerge, and so somebody needs to sit down right now and start thinking, how are we going to communicate this to the public tomorrow?
Is there a feeling like former President Mahama said that Ghanaians they have short memory, that we'll raise all the objections, etc., and then we'll move on? Would they be feeling like that? Because when we raise all of the concerns about the donations, etc., we moved on.
Well, it all depends on what answers we get. If they answer our questions, and the people of Ghana are happy with the answers, then why not move on?
All right.
Although we wouldn't have done our jobs if we don't make it clear that these are MOUs.
Okay.
Okay, these are MOUs. No one has signed a deal that is committing our nation yet. This is like a declaration of intent, if you like. So we still need to get the detail. What are we declaring that we want to do with China?
Right.
And is Ghana happy with it?
Is Ghana happy with it? One of the people I'd like to hear from on this matter, by the way, is John Peter Mel, the sector minister, who's been fighting this day and night and being on the ground all by himself, arresting people, actually.
Still linking it to Galamsey.
Oh, of course.
Inexorably.
Of course, you cannot take that out of it. You'll be kidding yourself, I think. So anyway, it is a developing story. It's just something that happened today, and so I'm expecting that the week will be full of such stories, and like I just said, questions, and like both my panelists are saying, the details, of course, is what will set us free from all the thoughts that are haunting us.